So a lot of people, when they look at conventional, eating and exercise plans, there's often a few different theories, I guess, calories in, calories out, watch your sugars, and all those things do play a role. But what often gets overlooked is what hormones play a role in things like exercise and food and lifestyle. So often what I always refer to when I'm training or doing up a training and eating program is what's the hormonal response. So for example, when you're doing a lot of cardiovascular exercise, running, cross trainer, what hormones are active then? When you're lifting weights and when you're doing resistance-based training, what hormones are active then? And what is the best portion to do to keep those hormones balanced? Because if you're doing too much of the wrong exercises, then often you can actually contribute to imbalancing your hormones even more. So often I look at the whole, picture, not just the exercise, but your food and your lifestyle and how all those contribute to balancing your hormones.
When you speak about biosignature, it kind of plays into that idea that, you know, um, a lot of people say, but I can't move it no matter what I do. I train all the time, but I just can't seem to move the stubborn fat around my booty, or I can't move the fat in under my arms. And a lot of trainers laugh at that and they say, no, you can't spot train. But are you saying that
Yes.
we can spot train?
Yeah, well, if you look at the hormones and the receptor sites or the hormone receptor sites around different parts of your body, it makes sense that if you've got too much of that hormone, then you will store fat in that particular area. So going back to the navel fat, often that's linked to high cortisol. So you can train till the cows come home, you can go on, strict diets and all the rest, but if you're sleep deprived, if you're dehydrated, if you're not getting a lot of that stress management stuff and that lifestyle stuff, it can be hard to shift fat. So that's why a lot of people have come to me and saying, oh, I've tried a lot of things and it's not working. And often, even just doing your blood work, making sure that your magnesium levels where they should be can actually help balance that hormone cortisol. So when you start to balance that, then you'll find that that navel fat can actually be reduced. So yeah, so there is some truth to spot training. Doesn't mean that it's the easy way out, I guess, because you still got to do work. You still got to figure out how you're going to tackle that. But it's just a more scientific approach rather than just go with the conventional means of training and exercise. And often people say, well, just eat less, but that's not sustainable. And actually that can do more damage to your cortisol and your other hormones as well for the long term.
Are you saying that these conversations around hormone and body shape and trouble zones, are these related to hormonal fluctuations? So is this a conversation for perimenopause and menopause, or is this always, like this is always a conversation?
It's any stage of life, because as you get older, or as you, even me going through pregnancy, that's when I really discovered my hormones. But any age of life, your hormones are going to be fluctuating, even depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, or if you're going into perimenopause, your hormones are going to change because you're transitioning. So the better awareness you have of how they're changing and how they're going to affect you, you can actually use those, tools, these foundational tools, to help not have that fluctuation as much. I think it's near impossible to completely balance your hormones because your body's natural means is to have those fluctuations, but you can reduce the highs and lows by understanding, the food principles, the lifestyle principles, and the exercise principles.
I'm going to go back to what you said earlier in our conversation. You were saying certain exercises can trigger hormones. Talk to me about that principle.
Yeah. So this is just based on, I guess, over the last 2 decades I've trained people, is often I've found that in particular females that do a lot of cardiovascular exercise and not enough structured weight training. So when I say structured weight training, it has to have enough volume to really get the hormone benefits from it. What I've found is that the ones that do too much cardio, not enough of the strength training, often find that their weight's just not shifting, particularly around that sort of belly fat. So they might be feeling like they're lighter, but they're just not getting that sort of tone, or they're not getting that body composition, transformation, and often that comes down to looking at what hormones are stimulated when you train. Often with cardio or aerobic exercise, it's not to say that you don't do it. You just don't want to do it excessively, or you want to have the right portion of weight training and cardiovascular exercise. So if I was doing, say, 80% of my week was cardio and only 20% was weight, you may find that you might be overstimulating cortisol, so you might be producing too much, which is counterproductive to what your objective is, which is to, lean down, have a more stronger, shapely physique. So they're the type of things that you just want to look at, is looking at your program proportions. If you, say, had 80% structured strength training, and then you had, your 20% cardio, which is just like, you're walking and you're doing some incidental exercise and whatnot, you'll probably find that you'll stimulate a lot more of the hormones that will help with keeping you young. So your anti-aging hormone, DHEA, which I think I've mentioned before with you in our talks, you'll control that cortisol better, so you won't overtrain so much, which is going to help with the stubborn belly fat. You often will find too, just with like that consistent weight training, is that you're going to get the physique change. So you'll see the broader shoulders, the littler waist, the shapely legs, so things like that, from doing consistent strength training in a higher portion to cardio. That will help as well. DHEA is like your anti-aging hormone that helps with your skin, helps with your nails, keeps you youthful, keeps your sex drive up, all of that sort of thing. So doing structured strength training in a higher proportion actually helps stimulate that hormone.
What are the best youth hormone inducing and safe cardio exercises to dovetail back into this program?
Yeah, walking is fantastic. Walking hills, if you've got hills around you. Cross training is very good. So, you've got your traditional cross trainers at the gym. They're less weight bearing. Look, people love to run, and if they are a bit addicted to it, then I don't like to tell them that they can't run. But often it's quite high impact on the knees, particularly as we're getting older, and it does really bump up that cortisol. So if you've got cortisol issues, I often try to avoid running. They're probably the best ones, walking and cross training. I find that everyone can get out and do a walk, so it's not limited to just having strength training equipment as well. If you don't know where to start, find some hills and walk up some hills. That'll get you started, and then obviously do your weight training as well, or your strength training.
And to wrap it up, I would like to ask you, what is a reasonable time frame to get your hormones under control via exercise and to start seeing results in those problem areas and in our overall vitality and youth markers?
Depending on how committed you are to the process, I guess. I find for some people, one round of accountability, they really start to nail some of those, bad habits, and start to implement some of the hormone principle habits. And they find that either their cycle gets more regular, so their moods get more regular. Some people, even after 2 weeks, can notice a difference. Now, they might not have the transformed body yet, but in terms of their fluctuations of moods, which we know is, hormones have a big role in how we feel, can be almost, instant, 1 to 2 weeks. If you are looking for a fairly big change to, say, your midsection or your back fat or legs or whatever it is, I would give yourself a good 8 to 12 weeks of being consistent, and just not just being consistent, I guess, with what I tell you to do. It's more working with you to find something that's sustainable. So anyone can follow a genetic a generic sort of program. But you also need to find something that's sustainable for you. And I think that that's really important as well.